afternoon, all, and welcome to another edition of the Sal Greco Show. And I'm your host, Sal Greco. If you are watching us on YouTube, please hit that like, share, subscribe button, hit the notification button as well. If you're watching us on Rumble, hit that Rumble button, hit that like button. And, if you're on X, where we're streaming live as usual, please hit that repost button and share this out when you can. I hope everybody's is off to a grandioso start to their day. There's been a lot in the news. So before we get to our guests, I was going to cover a couple of topics. Obviously, last night and yesterday, there seems to have been a fiasco in New York City. So we're just going to show you that now there was some kind of pro-Palestine protest or something like this at Columbia University. And as you can see here, they're holding, I believe there's a line. This is them banging on the door, the students, or I don't know, anarchists, whatever you want to call it. And this is from Olia Scootercaster from freedomnews.tv. And as you can see, look at what's going on here. They're banging on doors. Didn't we see this a year ago? And so much has changed because when you go from a weak person in D.C. as the president versus a strong person who actually got the president of this university changed, the university contacted the New York City Police Department and said they want him out because that's part of the deal. Because, as you know, the money that they're being funded through federally, that is one of their agreements. So they can't just have these anarchists show up and do whatever the hell they want. And that is one of the issues that they were having. So yesterday we saw the NYPD at its finest. They were out there. They were able to go in there. They actually arrested people. They weren't letting people just walk around and do whatever they want. This didn't get out of hand like it did a year ago. If you remember, you saw at that time Tariq Shepard go on and actually make this look like he was a deputy commissioner of public information, make this look like it was the NYPD's Iwo Jima moment, with the flag raising and that. And here's more of this stuff here. I mean, you can't have these people creating chaos in the school. Not only that, but the way, and trust me, these people they're not all from Palestine. These are, we'll call them the misfits of society. They're also, I would say their mind has been captured by certain things they might be seeing or hearing online with these other, I don't know if you want to call them extremist groups. And these are people that are radicals. They like to use that term with right-wing people, but and left-wing people. These people just want to watch the world burn. So it was nice to see the NYPD moved in and did what they had to do right off the bat, unlike last year where we can't go in, exigent circumstances, forget about that. And it was a whole big thing afterwards when they finally went there and wasted so much taxpayer money. They took that big monstrosity out from ESU, and ESU didn't even go in there first. It was the CRT team, which is now, as we understand, being I guess they're becoming the Q team now. So all of that to prop up Kaz Daughtry and John Schell and Jeffrey Madry at that time, and of course Eric Adams, who is one of the most incompetent people to ever be elected to office anywhere, period. So speaking of Eric Adams, the next thing I wanted to show is one of his opponents, which is Brad Lander. Brad Lander, who's also running for mayor, and he's the comptroller, he released his campaign video. And just for background, before we play this, he has about $4 million in campaign funds, and he spent $750K on this commercial. So let's just show this for the audience to show you who you might elect as your next mayor, even though I highly doubt this guy's going to get elected.
New York City needs a mayor who can focus on our problems, not their own. We need Brad Lander. Andrew Cuomo spent $60 million of your money to defend himself in court. That's corrupt. But Brad Lander fights corruption to make New York safer and more affordable. Lander stood up to Trump and Musk when they stole $80 million from us. And he's fought for New York, building thousands of affordable housing units. Andrew Cuomo piles on the corruption. Brad Lander will crush it. Paid for by Lander 2025.
You know, listen, this guy wasn't even born in New York City. I believe he's from Missouri. He's wealthy. This guy collects a lot of rents from his brownstones. And here he is. Yeah, cancel rent, but he's collecting rent. This guy is very wealthy. And the commercial is like a slap in the face to people. And he's the comptroller, man. And he does nothing to try to curtail any of what's going on, whether it be in city council, definitely not Eric Adams or his cronies or the New York City Police Department. You know, as a comptroller, he has the power to settle lawsuits and get rid of certain things or investigate things. And all he ever does is try to politically align himself with, you know, what he's trying to do. So if he's trying to go after someone or make a point because he's now running for mayor, which is laughable, he will then target an investigation, not because it's on its merit, because it politically will benefit him while he's running. So that's the kind of guy he is. This video, $750K, folks, for that 30-second ad. And by the way, he's collecting probably that much, if not more, and just in a couple of months in his rent from his brownstone. So very interesting that happened. So now I want to segue into another topic, which would be the Chicago mayor. Another guy who's just as bad as Eric Adams, if not worse. Chicago's a mess. And look at what happened here. And this comes from Roger Stone, right? Full disclosure, I also am on the Italian-American Civil Rights League. I am part of the board there. So the Italian-American Civil Rights League will sue the most incompetent mayor in Chicago history if there's an attempt to remove the statue of Christopher Columbus. So I don't know if we could play what this guy says, because he's got quite a lot to say about all the wrong things usually.
We do have to make sure that our presentation is depicting not just truth, but the best part of our existence, which is our collective humanity.
The Park District is planning to clear away the larger Grant Park statue's base and redesign the plaza as a gathering space that will accommodate temporary artwork.
Yeah, this guy is out of touch, and I find it offensive. As you know, I am Italian-American. I am Sicilian, and I'm tired of people trying to take away, you know, let's put it like this. You have all kinds of history months and heritage days and all this stuff, yet Italian-Americans were the backbone of this country. The first people that were ever lynched were Italian-Americans in New Orleans. That's a fact. And we were treated as a people very, you want to talk about unfairly, but brutally at times. So we hold one thing that should be valued in this country is not only was it discovered by an Italian, it was named after one in Amerigo Vespucci. Yet it's like, you know, where you would think Italian language would be, you know, something that people would learn or be a second language in this country. We're like a forgotten breed, other than, you know, they want to make stupid shows about people hanging out in Jersey Shore. So like, and basically give you a stigma of Italian Americans that doesn't really exist. It's a small little percentage, probably in some parts of the South Shore of Staten Island, but also that gives you the stigma, you know. But that's not who Italian Americans are. So when you worry about this, and I worry about this because this is something that should be important, you know. Christopher Columbus, I don't know what the hell Indigenous Day is. It's the day for someone who discovered the American territories, we'll say. I can't say America because I don't think he landed in America in 1492, but that it stands for a symbol, and it's a symbol for Italian-American people. We have all these other symbols for all these other people. You know, you got a George Floyd statue somewhere out in the world today, but you want to take down Christopher Columbus. That's not going to fly. And meanwhile, while this mayor who's incompetent is talking about something like this, he should be worried about the suicide rates in his police department in Chicago. And that's something that actually yesterday was touched on by Ron Layson and Rob Lukash on Executive Perspective, you know, about suicide rates. health, mental health awareness. Okay, and here it is. How can you be a cop in a city that hates you? And right here in this article, what does it say? In Chicago, the number of police suicides is far higher than anyone knew. 53 in the past decade. It's so overwhelming there, right? And you have to say it's so overwhelming because there's all these outside people pointing fingers at us. But this mayor is worried about the Christopher Columbus statue and wants to degrade Italian Americans because, he's doing such a outstanding job there. This guy has his own problems. Of course, he also had the migrant issue there. He was misusing funds. There was some kind of criminal referral from Congress given. I don't know what happened with that. But, of course, they left out Eric Adams, who's just as guilty as he is, if not even worse. So why is this man worried about a statue? And here's another one. Nationwide assaults against officers are increasing, with 79,091 attacks recorded in 2023. Up from 48,315 in 2014. Okay, this is Chicago. Chicago has a plethora of problems. The Christopher Columbus statue is not one of them, and he's just hoodwinking to his pals, wherever it is, his radical base, special interest or whatever it is that want to destroy the fabric of this country. And the Italian-American Civil Rights League, we will not stand by it. And if you do try to take it down, trust me, we will have litigation. We will be litigating this in court. And I've had quite enough of Italian-Americans as a whole being stomped on for no reason. It's everyone else, you can't say this, you can't do that, but Italian-Americans, Jersey Shore, that's what people think of. Thank you, MTV. And now I wanted to segue into the next thing that came up, which was something we've also been hammering down on this show, and that's the epic corruption of Letitia James. So right here, as you learned today, that Letitia James has an open FBI investigation on her for a mortgage fraud that we unveiled on this show with Sam Anton and Joe Gilbert. Okay, that would be funny. That would be a kind of statue maybe you want to put up there in Chicago. But there's Letitia James. Epic corruption is now being on full display. And Roger Stone did mention this on that post. So with that being said, in the on the bottom of this part, because it says right there, what do New York's corrupt Attorney General Letitia James and North Carolina U.S. Senator Tom Tillis have in common? Answer, they're both going to prison for mortgage fraud. And if you look down, this is from Jason Goodman. He wrote a whole article about this, the hidden empire of Tom Tillis, undisclosed deeds, rental income, and massive felonies. Apparently, Mr. Tillis, who's a senator in North Carolina, who is also the district, he was a assemblyman in the district there, 98th district in North Carolina. He was the Speaker of the House. And how long has this been going on for? Because it's always a pattern of they're from a small area, they've been there, whatever it is, and that's where the whole mortgage thing starts. So this would be interesting because now it's not just Democrats, it's also Republicans, like we were saying. And Jason Goodman's on that. So right there it says multiple examples of $0 property transfers between corporate and family-controlled interests. So this guy Tillis, who's also been a disruptor there in the Senate confirmation hearings of I believe it's Ed Martin, who they were trying to appoint to the District of Columbia as Attorney General. He's one of the people trying to stop that. And why? Because he's out committing mortgage fraud. So it's not just Democrats, folks. It's also Republicans, and we are on that. So the topic I want to discuss is, well, if you remember the New York City Police Department, why I was terminated, they said I knowingly and wrongfully associated with someone who's reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity. So criminal association. So actually my attorney, who is Eric Sanders, wrote this wonderful piece here. And it's right here, new legal commentary, weaponized association, how the NYPD's vague rules enable unequal discipline and retaliation. The NYPD's criminal association policy was designed to protect integrity. Instead, it institutionalizes power-based unfair discipline and retaliation, vague language, no due process, misuse of sealed records, sweeping discretion under Administrative Codes 14-115 and 14-137. Our latest blog reveals it reveals how this architecture doesn't just tolerate injustice, it operationalizes it. Employees have been flagged not for misconduct, but for proximity, identity, and belief, risk management, subpoenas, psychological referrals, and the chilling effect is real. This is no longer an internal matter. It's a civil rights emergency. We outline the legal violations, structural disparities, and urgent reform needed to restore constitutional order and public trust. Transparency, oversight, and statutory reform are not optional. They are overdue. And right there's the article. And I suggest you go to the sayingthisfrompc.com, read this blog, because it does mention how this has been weaponized against officers. Remember, they don't know how to define what association is. They say you're pictured with, therefore, but then if you say, well, as you could tell in that article, there'll be plenty of pictures of the upper echelon of the NYPD doing exactly what they're saying. People like myself, or this, there was also a mention of a female in the article that they said criminally associated, whatever this means, yet they don't apply it equally. It's basically all arbitrary. And there's no fall safes. There's no checks and balances with this because it's all vague and broad. So that's something that needs to be changed because, again, unless you're criminally associating, whatever that means, what they really was designed to do is stop police officers from being corrupt or involved in corruption, like a Michael Dowd situation, something like that where, he's running around. There's a bagman for drug dealers. He shouldn't have been associating with these people, but they never caught it. Or they let it slide, whichever one. Now it's actually the police commissioners themselves that are involved in associating with people and sitting there while human trafficking might be going on in the place they're in, and they have nothing to say. But hey, let's have a drink with Fat Joe. So I guess that's what the police department does. And so that is a very good article. I think everyone should read. It's highly detailed. References court cases, and it's very important if you're a New York City police officer or any officer anywhere, this criminal association thing needs to change. They need to change the entire language of this. This needs to be nationwide because unless as an officer or whatever you are in the police department, you are associating with someone who has engaged, meaning both of you are engaged in some kind of criminality, that should never be a question of who you hang out with. 70% of America has some kind of record. And as the NYPD has stated, they solely go after someone and say, that person has a criminal record. Well, then the whole police department needs to be fired, I guess, right? Because you have some cops that are on right now that have criminal convictions, just to let you know. And then the last thing I wanted to state here was there's an article here that mentioned how the NYPD upper brass, and I'm talking about Eric Adams and company and the upper management, okay, hanging out with these far-right Jewish leaders. Remember, Eric Adams is trying to cater to this crowd. He needs the Jewish vote. He needs their money, okay? And that's I'm just setting the table on this article. And so they're hanging out, again, seedy people. I mean, these people are very, I don't know what the connection there is, but a gentleman that's involved in that is the deputy chief, Richard Taylor, someone I've been mentioning over and over again. And he's in this article and he's pictured with people. So right here, I'm going to read this part. Taylor, the NYPD deputy chief, also attended the March 28th IHF event and other events in his NYPD uniform. Man, I wonder what's going on there. These NYPD officers are frequently meeting with this group and engaging in uniform, explicitly tying the NYPD to the politics of this organization and to their agenda. Kulminayak told Prism. Prism wrote this article. So they're hanging out in uniform, so it's job time, or they have to get approval. I don't know who's approving this in order to do this. And they're hanging out with these political figures that I guess you can make the statement the NYPD is now endorsing certain groups and certain people. And I guess they had a problem that I was friends with someone and they said that's political and we don't like that. So now they're making value judgments. And it's funny that they're getting caught. And again, this guy Taylor, his name is just constantly coming up everywhere. But you should read this article that references him and a bunch of other executives. But I mean, this guy is, I don't know how he still has a job. That's the best way to describe it. So check that one out. So now I want to get to our guest because he wrote his own article. So our first guest is going to be someone I know. He's a journalist. He also writes for the Gateway Pundit. And he recently had a small little expo. I don't know if it's small, but it's an expose on an infiltrator of the MAHA movement, which is, of course, what's associated with Robert F. Kennedy, who is the Secretary of Health and Services in the United States now. So I wanted to bring him on. So here is my friend. He's also a journalist, Jacob Engels.
Hey, it's great to be on the program, Sal. How are you doing today?
It's great to be with you, Jacob, because as you know, you were also, just a full disclosure, Jacob was dragged into what I mentioned, criminal association. They had referenced Jacob as a member of the Proud Boys, yet he's not a member of any Proud Boys. He covers these people along with many others, and they could never justify why I'm not supposed to associate with Jacob as an NYPD officer, just so you understand. And they used my communications of me even calling Jacob or texting him hello as some kind of nefarious activity because they illegally use subpoenas in order to do that. So just want to throw that out there before anybody says, oh, Jacob is not a member of anything. He's Jacob Engels. He's actually a member of the Gateway Pundit. That's about it.
No, and Sal, I think what you've already discussed on the program today, the unequal application of ethics rules, laws, as it relates to a police department or to these senators, members of Congress, it really is shocking because they wanted to hammer you so much about, oh my gosh, he talked to Jacob Engels, he talks to Roger Stone, he talks to all these people, and therefore, a decade or more of service you gave to the department is moot. But we can have Eric Adams and many other police officials at the time palling around with P. Diddy, Fat Joe, having a grand old time, and nobody applies those rules equally. And that's a problem, because if we are a nation of laws and a nation of order, then it doesn't matter how big your bank account is, how famous you are, what elected office you hold, you should be held accountable.
Clean streets in New York City.
Look at this.
Let's go Knicks.
This guy is just,
I mean, is this a Black Mirror episode that we're watching with Eric Adams? I mean, I just can't with the guy. I mean, he dresses well. I'll give him that. He dresses well. But no, so everyone that's listening, I did do an article recently. It's on stonezone.com. And it talks about Brigham Bueller. And this individual, former pharma bro, somehow sneaked his way into the MAHA movement. And what's funny, Sal, and for everyone watching, is this guy claims to be against Big Pharma, claims to be against all of these harmful drugs and chemicals that they're putting into our bodies. Yet his compounding pharmacy, Revive RX Pharmacy, is producing a majority of their products are knockoffs of Big Pharma, including what we see with like Ozempic and Mounjaro. So he's just doing a off-brand reboot of the same products that he rails against on shows like Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson. And here's the real kicker, Sal. He sent out a shipment of these GLP-1 knockoff weight loss, diabetes medications, and they contained testosterone. Over 750 went out to people across the country. Not only is that bad business, mislabeling a product, that could have killed somebody. And we're lucky that it didn't kill somebody. But then you go into some of the other reports by the FDA, and by no means do I like the FDA. I don't like the way they handle a lot of things, but basic concepts like a clean room where you're labeling and you're inserting medication into a vial or into a bottle, you have to have certain cleanliness standards. And the FDA inspector witnessed people dealing with garbage and then putting medicine into a bottle or into a vial without properly going through the cleaning of their hands and getting new gloves. So this guy, he's been inserted into the movement and has had all of these issues and run-ins with the law. And interestingly enough, he has been sued by one of the major pharmaceutical companies for copying their drugs. So on one hand, he's this warrior against big pharma, but then on the other hand, he's copying their products, so much so to the point where he's being sued by one of these big pharma. I think it's Eli Lilly that has been suing him. And so I'm just trying to figure out, Sal, you've seen this, I've seen this a lot, whether it's the MAHA movement or the MAGA movement. We have these people who we haven't seen before, and for one reason or another, they catch a little spark, they get an interview, they get booked somewhere, and then we start finding out who they really are and what their purpose is. So for me, when I look at this and I see the FDA violations, I see the lawsuits, and I see that he's still operating, one has to wonder, did Big Pharma send this guy into the MAHA tent to get all of these associations, and then when it's time for the rug to be pulled and he gets charged for killing somebody by mislabeling a drug or putting the wrong drug into a vial or a bottle, what are they going to say, Sal? They're going to say, look, see, the MAHA movement is dangerous. They're trying to kill people. This guy's a prime example. He was on Tucker Carlson. He was on Joe Rogan. He met with RFK. It's all their fault. And I don't want to see it. And if we can't police our own side, then we have no business talking about what Democrats are doing or whatever crazy nonsense that they're involved in. I mean, it's a point. You've hit it on a lot of your coverage of the police department and certain people in our movement where you've been pretty relentless, but that's what it takes. If we can't keep our house in order, we can't expect anybody else to do the same.
No, you're right. I don't even know how this guy got this far. No, but the biggest problem though, Jacob, is I think people don't do their research.
Yep.
If they would have done a little background on him, they would have easily found what you got this from a couple of minutes of researching this guy, and Joe Rogan apparently doesn't, and I don't know what Tucker's doing.
Yeah.
They should have asked him that, what are you doing with this stuff?
Well, and he downplayed it on Rogan because one of these violations was occurring at the time that he went on Joe Rogan, and he downplayed. He said, "Oh, that's just the FDA attacking me. Don't pay attention to that. Don't look into that." And actually, the way I found this article was from Shane Trejo over at Big League Politics. He put it up first, and then I started to investigate and do a little more research, and I'm like, how is this guy getting support from the MAHA and MAGA movement? And it's just really interesting. Sometimes President Trump might make a decision that we don't like. Sometimes people in the movement might do something that we don't like. It's our jobs as citizens, fellow humans, journalists, whatever you are, to call people out and hold them accountable. It's not mean, it's not nasty, it's just stating the basic facts. If we want to restore America and give Donald Trump the best option to do that for our country and for the world, quite frankly, then we have to be on red alert, like Laura Loomer. I mean, Loomer is all over it, exposing these people in the administration. We need more of that. You're doing it with Eric Adams and the police department and everything else that you've covered. We just can't sit around. This is not like, oh, wow, Trump won, we're going to brunch, or we're going to go, hang out here, or wow, look at my selfie at the White House. Wow, Epstein files exposed. Wow, 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 wow. That's all performative. It doesn't help. We need people who are willing to do the work.
That's right, Jacob. And I say this, I voted for this man 3 times, and I've supported him. In fact, I lost everything because I supported him as president and thought this was the correct, way of the future for the country. But there are things that people know when I don't like. I don't like this association with Eric Adams. I don't really know what's going on there, but it's starting to look like something that could hurt him. Well, not him, well, it could hurt him, but the midterms, it might play itself out come midterm time, because this association is some kind of thing he wants with New York. And I've laid out that the facts are Eric Adams cannot help you with anything. He is the mayor. He cannot change the laws that are there. The police department cannot cooperate with ICE. This is all legislative things. I mean, look, Mayor Adams gave his brother's top fundraiser a security escort to Trump inauguration. I mean, it's just one thing after the other. And when you talk about associating, it's not a good look for President Trump to be with one of the most epically corrupt human beings to ever be elected to any office anywhere. The other guy whose name comes up with Eric Adams is Kwame Kilpatrick, who used to be the mayor of Detroit.
Hey, as a Michigander, born and raised for early part of my life, I mean, Kwame Kilpatrick and Eric Adams are cut from the same cloth. I mean, Kwame was doing so many crimes. I mean, the parties at the Manoogian Mansion, prostitutes showed up dead, floating in the river, and that's not to let's not forget about all of the bribes that he took and all of the shady business dealings he was involved in and contracts he was getting on the side, his consultants. And, the only difference I see between Eric Adams and Kwame Kilpatrick, Sal, is Kwame Kilpatrick got busted, he got sentenced, he did his time, and while I'm not the biggest fan of him being pardoned, at least there's some contrition. He admitted, I did something wrong. I made a mistake. I'm going to jail now. And I think he, during that time in prison, kind of had a renewed interest in the Christian faith. So I'm a lot more okay with Kwame because Adams is just running roughshod over everyone, and he thinks that he can get away from legal accountability for his actions. And I hope that that's not how this case plays out, because he needs to be punished for what he's done, and he needs to be held to the same laws and ethics and morals or whatever codes are within the city of New York, or even his past actions in the police department. If he's going to hold you to that, hold himself to it.
That's what I think America would like, because it could happen to you. Not only that, Jacob, his underlings, his little cronies, which we call the Crumbs crew, are just as bad. Just as bad. It's unbelievable what's been going on. Logic's Finest says the three-letter agencies have proven there are more people in middle management who are hardcore far leftist than we ever thought. It's an uphill battle turning things around. He's 100% correct. He's right. Hood Mayor NYC says they bring in Adams to the table. Sal Adams, fixer Reverend Paul P. Martin Esquire, is advising Trump. Trump wants that golf course. And that's another thing. The Woolman Rink and the Ferry Links in the Bronx. If no one has seen this yet, the Parks Commissioner who makes the call with that is about to resign or resigning. The person that's now going to be in charge of that is everybody's favorite deputy mayor, Kaz Dawdry. That would be the buffer to make this deal, because that commissioner turned down $120 million, bribe from another company. The problem is Trump wants the name back on it, not particularly him, maybe his son, Eric, or Donald Jr., but I think Eric runs the Trump organization. But with a felony conviction, Jacob, they won't be able to bid on anything. So I don't know where this goes, other than by controlling Eric, you could get Eric Adams, you get your name back. So again, these are things that I don't know, Jacob, maybe these things worked when he was in Atlantic City and that kind of bully tact, but this leaves them open to scrutiny and potentially midterms, and things could turn around real quick if, let's say, Democrats take back over, because to impeach him won't take long, as I'm sure Eric Adams will sing like a canary to avoid a subpoena or anything else.
Well, I think so too. The question is, who is going to bring charges against him? Is it going to be DOJ? It's certainly not going to be the Southern District of New York. We know that. It's not going to be the Attorney General of New York. They're not going to charge him, although they've feigned some upset about how his case and his story has gone over the past couple of months. But I don't know. At the end of the day, he has to be held to account, and we can play patty cake with him a little bit and say, hey, take care of this immigration issue for us, and we'll discuss and talk about your situation. And hey, if that's the master play, let him kind of hang himself in terms of, hey guys, all right, charges are dropped. I'm going to be a good boy. I'm going to assist ICE in deportations. I'm going to do all the things that everyone's upset that I'm not doing. And then he's going to go right back to the same criminality, crimes, corruption. So I just don't know how we hold him accountable without throwing charges down.
Everybody actually seconds your sentiment, Jacob. All of New York City is asking the same questions. I could tell you this. Many people that have supported President Trump voted for him. Many that don't have a job right now. You know why? Because they were terminated under a mandate under Eric Adams, who enforced this mandate. And then they was told by the courts he had to hire these people back, which he keeps appealing. Those were all Trump supporters. Like 90-something% of those people voted for Trump. They're all civil service workers. And that is a slap in the face to know that this man, whose trial would have already taken place, was taken away for what? To help with immigration, where we know, Jacob, he can't. The legislation in New York City states, it's been in it for a while. New York City, NYPD and corrections cannot cooperate with ICE. They can't tell them about who's illegal in the cell, if they have an ICE detainer warrant, because it's been a law passed by city council, and there's also state legislation. An executive order cannot circumvent it. He tried. Of course, what happened in 5 minutes, went to court, temporary restraining order, that executive order is out the window. They're going to fight him tooth and nail until he's out of there in December 31st because he will not win re-election. So what did you really benefit out of this? Other than that golf course. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what he wants.
Yeah.
It's starting to look like that, Jacob, and that is the problem. And that's why we may love, we voted for Trump. We like him, but this stinks to high heaven as far as what could be corruption. And this association is, I don't know, this guy could really hurt him. And I don't know if he could see it.
Well, again, Sal, like I talked about when I first got on the program a little while ago, President Trump and the movement relies on people like you, me, and a lot of other citizen journalists, activists, people who voted for him across the country. They rely on us to sound the alarm and say, hey, we're a little upset with this. We don't like how this is going. Here's how it could go bad. Here are the concerns we have. Because if we don't do that and we don't have these discussions, then we're not participating in trying to solve the problem or hold people accountable. And that goes for everyone on both sides. So there are some things President Trump has done where I'm not the biggest fan of, and I make it known, and I hope a lot of other people do the same. And Trump is a pretty responsive leader. You know, when he sees the people across this country get really interested and excited about an issue, whether it's from a negative or positive perspective, he's a very good operator in seeing that and addressing the issue. So that's all I can say is I think we just need to keep talking about these things, letting the president know how we feel, give him high fives, give him attaboys when he does something right, support him in that way. But when we feel like he's done something that is not what we voted for or doesn't align with our belief in the movement, we have to speak up as well. And that's a good partnership between the president and the American people.
I think you're spot on, Jacob, and it's great to have you on today and have you discussing these things. As we kind of spoke about this, but we never really talked about in depth about this whole Eric Adams situation. Where can people reach you, Jacob, and where can they see your next expose on corrupted politicians?
Yeah, so everyone can always find me at thegatewaypundit.com, occasionally on infowars.com. And centralfloridapost.com. That's more local Florida stuff, but we do a lot of exciting things there. And also on X at Jacob Engels. I got it back, Sal. It's only been a couple of months after like 7 years, so I'm loving life, enjoying it. And thank you so much for having me on the program. You've been doing a great job, and it's great to have a brother in this fight that understands the importance of holding everyone accountable so that we can save America. And great work, by the way, at the Italian-American Civil Rights League with our friend Mike Crispy. You guys got to keep pushing and keep people aware that Italians are not to be besmirched. They're not to be beaten down socially, economically, politically. Those days are long gone. And I think you guys are doing great work over there.
Well, thank you, Jacob. I think your next article might have to be about this Mayor Johnson who thinks he's going to rip that statue down. That could be your next work.
Hey, Hey, I'm game. I'm game. I'm ready to go.
Well, thank you, Jacob, for coming on. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and keep the great work coming. Keep that fight on, brother. You're doing a great job, and like I said, you might have to expose Mayor Johnson next.
Hey, I'm on it. Thanks, Sal. Appreciate you and everyone listening. Thank you for your time. You have a great rest of the show, Sal.
Thank you, Jacob. Yeah, that's Jacob Engels. Like I said, he's been a journalist for quite a while. He writes for Gateway Pundit, and as you can tell, he's has good analysis on everything involving Eric Adams, and of course this big pharma guy who somehow, I don't know how he's not criminally charged yet, but that's the point. We're here to alert the public. There's a lot of low information people out there, and we're trying to make them informed so that you can make informed decisions. And of course, if you're in the FBI, maybe you need to open your eyes and look in an area where maybe you glossed over it, or even the police department, because I'm sure now they should be saying to themselves, what is this guy doing sending out testosterone? I mean, that's crazy. That is crazy. And then he wants to act like he's all for the people. But great job by Jacob, and I think people should check him out on Gateway Pundit, and also follow him if you can on X. That being said, we have another guest on today, and I thought this was important because he's the co-chair of Blexit in Pennsylvania. He's also the chairman of the Harlem GOP. So he has a lot to say about not only Pennsylvania, but New York City in general, since he also ran for office there. So it's my honor to bring on Oz Sultan to the Sal Greco Show.
Sal, thank you for having me. By the way, it's Chairman Emeritus. We just we installed another chairman. So I'm basically handing over the reins on an organization that was founded in 1923. It's pretty exciting. But no, we've got the new chairman, Sesson Adams, is running for borough president. We'll see how he does. But New York needs a lot of change right now.
That's exactly why I brought you on, because you are trying to effect change, but of course there's always restrictions and people from both sides of the aisle trying to hold you down. So Oz, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and obviously what organizations are involved in, because you were the chairman of Harlem, so you know a lot about New York politics. So
yep. Hold on one second. I'm doing television.
It's live TV. That's what happens on live TV.
I'm in a hotel room and I'm like housekeeping. I'm like, it's hysterical.
We understand. Don't worry.
I appreciate you. Yeah, but no, where do you want to get started with this? I mean, there's a lot to cover here. I ran the Harlem Republican Club for 15 years. I ended up having some health issues the past couple of years. So I caught cancer. I'm almost through it. But that brought me down to PA. So I worked helping out with election integrity on the Trump campaign in 24. That was across a bunch of counties in eastern Pennsylvania. I'm actually originally from Pittsburgh. But it's now kind of on the east side of the state because all of the great cancer treatment is here, right? That got me involved. So I'm involved a little bit in Philly. I'm involved a bit in Montgomery County. I was at the Montgomery County Republican Club dinner last night. We're going to be helping field some candidates here as well this year. And I'm looking to potentially do like a longer term run here while supporting, the folks that I've helped build in Harlem for the past 15 years.
I see. So I know Pennsylvania's had a lot of issues. I mean, I know they went for Trump this time around, but last time it was all kinds of issues there. And it seemed to be Philadelphia, which was, I believe, a county where more voters voted than registered voters. And they keep trying to deny this fact that it's actually out there. I remember seeing that graphic. How can you even sink your teeth into something like that? Pennsylvania is a big state, and there's a lot of conservatives other than the three big areas, which I think Harrisburg, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. How can you move forward? Because you have all these different counties, and this is an easy thing because I see it all the time. those races are always close. So what's your objective on how, or your thoughts on how you're going to change the way that Pennsylvania is?
I think it comes down to the narrative, the rhetoric, and the people, right? So, the Democratic Party, you look at Harlem, you look at parts of Pennsylvania, they've owned entire areas for a relatively long period of time. In Philadelphia, it's been a Democratic machine going back to the Casey era, and that goes back 30, 40 years, right? We've had Republican leadership at different points in time. But the problem is that as the population grew in the past 20 years in Philly, so Philly 20 years ago was like 760,000 people. It's now 1.7 million people, right? The challenges that you have is that where other cities like Pittsburgh are they have, Pittsburgh's always been like a conservative crust with a liberal middle. And it's most of that is really because if you go to the counties outside of Allegheny, they're all reasonably conservative. But Allegheny County itself, again, being kind of split. And when I was growing up, it was always, we had like Tom Murphy, who was a Democrat, who was the mayor, and then we had Jim Roddy, who was a Republican, who was the county commissioner, right? And so you have those types of relationships in Pennsylvania. I think what happened in the past 20 years is that we just lost the script on Republicans, and three things led to that. Karl Rove and whatever the hiccups were with him leaving in 2006 left this huge vacuum, okay? And then under Rona's leadership, right, we didn't have the engagement. Like up until 2006, you had engagement in Jewish communities, engagement in Muslim communities, engagement in Black communities, engagement in variegated Asian communities. Like, there's Vietnamese outreach, Chinese outreach, that kind of a thing. Then you had them going into all of the immigrant communities that were developing through the wars that happened in the 90s and the 00s. Mm-hmm. All of that stopped in 2007. And then the second thing that was a problem was McCain. McCain did not think social media was presidential. While Barack Obama raised, over $100 million in small dollar donations, which we've seen Trump be very successful on twice, right? $1, $5, $10 donations, and leveraged social media effectively, we got trounced. So we lost 8 years there. And then the third piece of this is that the Democrats shifted the ball on what matters by saying that the Democrat ideology of morality, okay, which now is about folks that aren't American, folks that, want to change your gender. And I'm like, listen, that's America. If you want to change your gender, by all means do it. But be of a age where you can make these decisions and be at least through puberty, because the medical studies show that stops amygdala growth. And it has all sorts of ramifications on the child. This is America. You can do these things. But when that shifted, okay, and that became the rubric of what they have, we started getting into this weird space where a lot of us in minority and ethnic communities were just kind of faced with, okay, well, now our local leadership's Democrat and they are pushing this agenda, but what about my faith? What about my family, right? What about the security of our communities? What about, what about just the appropriate allocation of tax funds to things that aren't like paving over my parks? And we saw the same, and this is what I'm seeing in the outskirts of Philadelphia, is that the same bad policies that led to, kind of shutting down the green spaces inside of urbanization and really driving, towards creating enclaves that didn't have the appropriate city planning is what we're getting again, right? And I've seen this time and time again in New York, because there's so many opportunities to create housing that can fit the market of the people that actually live there. But time and time again, what they do is they're like, oh, this is very popular. We're going to bring in expensive housing, and maybe these popular people can go somewhere else, right? And this is what happened in multiple areas in New York, going all the way back to the 70s, because most of your trendy areas now were like burnt out places that only had like clubs and things. That's the Lower East Side, the Village, that sort of a thing. And now they've come into Harlem, they've come into the Bronx. You're seeing the same kind of thing inside of Philadelphia, right? You're seeing this drive of gentrified urbanization, and it's pricing everyone outside of the city. So now what you're doing is the same thing that they did in Washington, D.C., where they're like, let's move all the blacks to, I want to say Prince Edward County in Maryland. I may have the name wrong, but they literally relocated tens of thousands of people. And then it went from things that were reasonably affordable to just completely unaffordable Washington. And were it not for the Doge cuts that we're seeing right now, you wouldn't have seen that free fall that housing market came into. So when you look at these things, I'm sorry for this long answer, but I have to unpack all this stuff.
Yeah, you got to unpack everything. I understand.
So when you look at these three events that happened, you now have to say, well, where do our citizenry stand? What are they looking at? What's important to them? And they're recalculating right now. They're looking and saying, wait, these things don't necessarily matter to us because we can't find jobs, we can't do this, we can't do that. But in many cities, especially Harlem and I will say parts of Philly, the Democratic establishment has so much of an iron fist over people that they're terrified of revoking the establishment, of going against the establishment, because that could limit job opportunities, that could limit this, that could limit that. Because the biggest issue, I think, between the right and the left is, on the right, if we have people who are racist, we know who they are, okay? They'll tell you that. On the left, it is terrifying because there's so much casual racism that extends across the breadth of the Democratic Party. It's about, well, maybe we can exclude these people. Maybe these people aren't right. Maybe these people don't need the same policies that we get here. We like voucher programs, but they should really benefit our kids and not the black kids. So that's really the education that you have to prove. And that's the biggest challenge, because we as Republicans haven't gone in and said, are you better? We always go in with things like personal responsibility. And personal responsibility is a big thing. But personal responsibility is a hard thing to talk about in areas where the average median income is $20,000 less than GDP, right? Where, people have trouble actually, they have to sit there and they'll be like, well, do I want to have lunch? Do I want to have money to get home on the train, or am I walking today, right? And this is a big problem in both constituencies. And I'd say Philly and uptown New York have the same issues. So one is getting into that. Two is to getting into areas that used to be conservative, maybe 20, 30 years ago. But again, after Karl Rove, we stopped talking to everyone. Like, there hasn't been a Republican that's gone into some of these areas in 25 years, right?
Like a Harrisburg, like one of those areas, yeah.
So it's warming that up again. So Sesson and I are doing a little bit in New York, but we're doing a lot down here as well. And part of this is going into, heavily like Black communities that I've worked in for about 20 years, and also working with the constituencies that are there. So what folks aren't aware of is that the American Muslim population is now about 7% of total voter base, right?
Yeah.
But the hallmark of the American Muslim population, because people are always talking about people from freaking overseas. Doesn't matter. You've got American Muslims have been here since 1750. Okay, Black Muslim America is hallmarked inside of Philadelphia. And then you've got these other enclaves such as New York, Atlanta, Chicago, a couple other places. But media doesn't cover that. Media only covers, like the guys who look like my cousins, and me being I'm a mutt, very high. I call myself Zatar-based Heinz 57, right? Because it's like, most of us in America are Heinz 57. You're a blend of things, but I'm Arab and Indian and Moor. Like, I've got that little black Moor part inside of there. And it's led to me having very interesting conversations inside of many of our communities. But these people don't feel that they've had representation from the Democrats. They are open to voting different. We saw in the last election that they are voting different. And then, I've benchmarked my entire career partially on doing interfaith work. And I think that the challenges that we have right now, and I was talking to like a couple of my buddies from Israel, and I'm going to start talking to some rabbis around here. I think one of the biggest problems that we have is no one talks to each other, and we don't do this in an American way. Like, I think if you were to and we're going to start testing in Philly. I'm going to bring in, a rabbi who's not like super strict kosher, right? So, because it's easier to do the barbecues that way. We'll bring in an imam, but we're going to try and keep it halal kosher for the most part. And then I'm going to bring in, one or two pastors, because you've got all these different enclaves here. And if we can have people just, listening to them talk a little bit, right? Because I think that most of this, that the anti-Semitism, the anti-Muslim hate, and now the anti-Catholic hate, because this is a big problem in many cities, stems from the simple fact that people don't know anything about it. And when you're fed this doctrine from, largely Democrats, but a secular doctrine that says that these things matter now, these are our new issues, but we need to ignore the religious people, we have to go back to the Constitution. And it's like we're fighting a battle that you fight about every 100 years. The Irish Catholics had to do this in the 1800s. The Jews, and they had to do this all the way through. Actually, the Catholics had to do this all through World War II. They had to pay in blood to be accepted in this country, right? The Jews, we're talking pre-1940 all the way up till, I would say, probably the 80s. I mean, it was still a weird thing in the 1980s, and they got accepted. And even inside of Jewish societies, like the Harmony Club, which is one of the, it's like the Metropolitan Club. It's one of these like hoity-toity clubs in New York. The Harmony Club itself, which is a Jewish club in New York, didn't allow non-German Jews in until 1948. So you've got and then no one talks about the fact that we've had to deal with like the Italian-American issue and the Irish issue and the Polish issue and the German issue, right? This was America kind of coming together. We're caught up in this dogma of like white and black, and then no other race gets talked about. But that's not America. America is this melting pot.
That's right.
And so to just kind of shut the hell up and give you the mic back. I personally think that it is incumbent upon us who are, minority Republicans to work within our communities to educate on the fact that, we are bringing job opportunities under Trump. It started in 2016 with Black Voices for Trump. That was Philly. That was Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, a few other cities. But now he has doubled down on his HBCU investments. So we've got billions of dollars coming into historically Black colleges again, which, by the way, Biden took away.
Yeah, he did.
$1 billion out of that. And then the last piece of this is, I want minority Americans, I want all Americans, but specifically minority Americans, because that's where I work, right? I work in these communities. I want them to understand that America is build your own adventure. If you have the opportunities to get the jobs, to do this, to do that, you can do anything. The possibilities are there. But I think that under these Democrat policies for really the past 40 to 60 years in many cases, where, if you try to get out of that trap of, okay, you've got Section 8 housing and you've got your EBT WIC food subsidy, but, you're trying to get a job. But if you get a job that makes more than $38,000 a year, then you lose both of these things. So you're in this catch-22, which no one pays attention to because they don't like live or work in poorer areas where they can't get out of this trap. Right. And then if they have kids, well, yeah, you want to make sure that the kids don't starve to death and things like that. But then you look at the education. I mean, Philadelphia and New York both rank horribly for education. We've got third graders. Third graders can't read.
I believe they have public safety issues as well, New York and Philadelphia. So and that could go to, I don't know if you're going to say cultural issues, but also, again, now you have these migrant gangs running around, and it seems to be in pockets because, there's the whole thing with the police department and how, stop, question, and frisk, and you're stopping people based on their race, all these outlandish claims. But yet, Philadelphia, I mean, look at this.
That's Kensington. Yeah, and what's really funny is that the mayor in Philly, all she did was she moved them down the street. right? This hasn't been cleaned up, and that is a nightmare situation, because it is heroin coupled with fentanyl, coupled with, like, they're using some sort of horse tranquilizer in there, and all of these people are dying in pieces, because as they go through that continued addiction, they just start getting things amputated off of them, and no one speaks to this. It is a complete health crisis. But this is what needs to be cleaned up, because if you go to the other side of Kensington, they're doing the same thing. It's just gentrification, right? They're saying, okay, let's push everyone out. Let's put these, everything looks like German Bauhaus architecture, has no soul anymore, but that's all it looks like. And you're talking $1,800 for a studio, $2,000 for a 1-bedroom, inside of areas where a 1-bedroom should be costing $800.
Look at this. That's amazing. Look at this. This reminds me of like Skid Row.
We call them the Walking Dead.
It looks like that. Chronicles of the Collapse says American culture glorifies violence, which has a direct impact on each generation.
You want to know something even funnier than that? We opened the Trump office in Philly, about a mile from there. It's just right up the street.
Oh my God! So you
literally go down the street the opposite direction. You go straight into Kensington, and you run into that.
Well, why isn't there anything like? Why don't they say we need the same issue in New York City? By the way, why aren't they going and saying these people need help? Obviously they're on drugs. Maybe they need a job. Maybe they need something. They need to fix their life. There's no plan, and these are Democrats. They're usually in charge in these districts. And what's their plan to change this? I don't see it.
There's a big challenge in between talk and action. The Democrats are always on this side. They're like, well, we know it's a mental health issue, and we know we need to invest in these kinds of things, right? But when it comes to action, what they've done, and we saw this under Bloomberg, and we also saw this under de Blasio in New York City, both of which could ostensibly call de Blasio is a Democrat, Bloomberg's kind of like a left-leaning independent, but they shut down the mental hospitals.
Yep.
Okay. So they shut down the mental hospitals and they put the people in the streets. And I remember this because this was, like around 2009, 2010, where you would see these homeless, crazy people walking around in the streets with hospital gowns on and flip-flops. And I'm like, what did you just do? Like, how is this sensible policy for the city? How is this helping anyone, right? And the same thing goes to homeless policy. I was there when Ben Carson handed Bill de Blasio a check for $187 billion, $187 million, not billion, in New York to help with the homeless issue. And we still have problems where they were putting illegal migrants in hotels, but we're putting homeless moms with their kids in these facilities that don't have proper ventilation in the Bronx, where some of these kids have been dying of the heat. Okay. Like, I mean, when I ran for office in Harlem, I actually hired some homeless folks to work on my campaign. They were in the housing, but a lot of this was to learn, like, what is their lived experience? What are they going through? How can we help them? A lot of them do want the help. A lot of them will take the job process if it's there. But what our Democrat institutions have done is they've created this, I want to call it like it's a concrete ceiling here. Okay, maybe the glass ceiling is up here. It's a concrete ceiling where these are the jobs that you can have. This is the training afforded to you. And if you don't like that, well, you can go on the Section 8 housing and you can take the checks, but you're staying here. You're not going anywhere. And by doing that, I almost feel that is kind of like de facto indentured servancy that they've handed to minority communities inside of all these areas, because you're not doing the same things that you do in the suburbs. You're not doing what you do in lily white liberal areas where we have the great opportunities of after school activities, that we have appropriate books, that we have education. We have inner cities where all they're doing is they're controlling the kids and they're making sure they graduate, but a lot of them don't have good reading facilities. They don't necessarily have the computer skills. And then you look at our leadership. I mean, Governor Hochul had the audacity to go, like in the Bronx, they don't even know what a computer is. And I'm like, well, whose fault is this? Because you guys have been in charge for 20 years,
She's an epically, I don't know. She's another one who's incompetent, but very rich off of being in politics. And, the state has an issue in itself. Now, you talk a lot about, I see a lot of similarities between what you're saying happening in Philadelphia and in New York City. But you were in Harlem, you've been around that area. Well, I wanted to ask you one thing about that is the city councilman there, which is Yusef Salam. And, the Republicans don't even put up a candidate against this guy. This guy is an absentee landlord over there. From what I understand, and this is from the people in the district, because they would message me and tell me this guy is never in his office. He's running around. He's supposed to be at city council in Oz. He's out getting paid.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Yusuf City Council 9, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we are running someone against him. We're running Lieutenant Luisa Flores. Luisa Flores' grandmother actually used to know Trump personally, and they were involved when we got the ice skating rink uptown. Okay, so we've got Latino families that have been intrinsically engaged with this, and I mean Trump has been. It's weird because everyone's like he's a fucking racist, and I'm like, did you see the picture of him and Rosa Parks and Muhammad Ali in '86 in the Medal of Freedom? I mean, I think the challenge with Trump is that when we had the Central Park 5 thing and that was proven wrong, he made a statement, right? And anyone who's in leadership in New York, if they see this and these are the guys who are arrested, they're going to make a statement. But that statement has haunted him for 40 years because as much as he has done within our Black and brown communities, as much as he has done to raise the profile of candidates who are minorities, as much as he has done to help us inside of the Republican Party, they still have their same talking point, which is a talking point from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But to use the point with Yusuf is as useless as Jumani, our public advocates. A public advocate is kind of like the JV position for mayor. Like if the mayor would get knocked out, it wouldn't go to one of his staff. It would go to public advocate in New York. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who, I understand financial strife. I have cancer. But how the hell are you the public advocate and you owe millions on a property and you defaulted for years, not just a couple of months, years, right? And they took his house away. Why is it that consistently these Democrats with this kind of a message resonate with this? I mean, it's like that episode of South Park where they were sitting there and smelling their own farts, and they're like, "Oh, our farts! This is wonderful," because they keep electing these types of candidates. I mean, I've talked when I was doing canvassing in Harlem about, the issues that we have with defunding the police, because people think that when you defund the police, you're just, it's like police bad. We punish you. I'm like, no, you took away our police athletic leagues. You took away our summer programs. You took away the programs for our kids at risk. You took away youth programs. You took away all this stuff to do what? To feel okay inside of your gated community in Westchester. This is the intrinsic problem that we have here, so that there's this huge disconnect, I think, between this liberal elite and really what impoverished America is. And this goes to impoverished Black America and impoverished white America, because I grew up outside of Appalachia, and I got to tell you, Harlem and Weirden, West Virginia have so much in common that you wouldn't believe it. Food deserts, lack of medical access, lack of transportation access, lack of job access, everyone on Section 8 and everyone receiving welfare, right? And then at the same point in time, heavily Democratic leadership that has fed them. It's literally like you're born, you go to school for a little bit, you're handed your Democrat, this is identity, right? And that's what you go with. But because it's become inculcated in the culture for so long, what we have to do is we have to shake it out. And
I tell you this too. I got comments here. he definitely knows people in Harlem, because Hood Mayor NYC said Youssef put in place puppet by Reverend Paul B. Martin Esquire and Al Sharpton.
Look, I used to fuck with Sharpton because I want to feed people, and that's look. And if you're going to work, Harlem is a D+46. Okay, it's 4% Republican.
Yeah.
So if we're going to be the guys that we are, I'm going to try and feed people and do barbecues and this and that. What you end up doing is you run up against the establishment that is getting all these contracts from Albany. Okay. And they don't want to lose their contracts, so they'll push back on us. We'll get attacked, that kind of a thing. I'm not going to go into the sub-politics of what you're talking about there, Hood Mayor, but I do concur that it is a significant problem that we have of graft in beside very small, tight circles. Like, look, all of your halfway houses in the state are run by Cuomo's sister, okay? And to add insult to injury on this, they charge the state $5,000 per bunk in a bunk bed per month. They feed them cheese sandwiches, and then mothers and children get raped inside of these facilities because you got to friggin' open bunk beds with women and men. I mean, it's like, does no one have a brain here? Like maybe do just a little bit of gender separation for protection here, type of thing. And these are ongoing issues, but because it's not reported, and because when we talk to the media, when when I talk to the media that's running, you know what I got? I got feedback like, what the fuck does this black Muslim want to bitch about now? And it's they don't take us seriously. They don't take our issues seriously. They don't take the needs of the community seriously. And because of the way that things are structured with Albany, the slush fund of local leadership really goes to their friends. Yep. The money will go into a restaurant that no one can afford to eat at, a jazz club that no one can afford to go to, but it doesn't go to the civic programs that we need to just level people up.
Yeah. He added, there was another comment from Hood Mayor NYC said, I keep hearing this word leadership thrown around. Where's the leadership? The leadership code phrase for do you know Jesus loves you? And I think
the leadership is building. The biggest issue that we have, I will tell you, as Hood leadership, is money. I'll put it to you this way. You look at the mayor's race in New York, okay?
Oh,
and you look at how corrupt New York is. Most of the Republican dollars have they gone to Sliwa? No. Have they gone to an alternative candidate? No. Have they gone to Cuomo? Yes.
Yes.
We're talking upwards of $1 million of red donations to Cuomo. And then, politics are politics. People don't like each other. That kind of stuff happens. But you need to have more, I would say, intrinsic relations the way that Abraham George does it in Texas. I mean, I met him at the RNC, right? Abraham does a weekly with the entirety of the Texas GOP. They do a stand-up call, and the problem we have in New York is that I like Chairman Cox a lot, and I think he does good work, but we're basically two states. We are downstate, which is literally Rye, New York South, okay, which is the 5 boroughs and the 5 towns. Then we are upstate, which is basically Kentucky, because if you're going from the Finger Lakes, which is wine country, over to the east side of the state, which is glass manufacturing and specialized industry, to the north part of the state, which is a lot of tourism and agriculture and other things up there. Like, you go so far, it almost turns into the South. It's really weird when you get up towards like Utica and those types of places. But we operate as two states, and I would have to say, as a criticism of our own Republican Party, is that this part doesn't really talk to this part. And it only gets talked to together when you get people like Elise Stefanik, And you're also talking a lot of drive time. The drive time from New York to the border is almost 7 hours.
Look at that. I see right there. That's just going to the middle of the state.
Yeah.
From New York City. But yet New York City is literally guys all the say in the sway of the state, because all the vote, you have 8 million people voting just in 5 boroughs alone.
We have some of the sway, because I'll tell you, the state senators, the state assembly people, that kind of stuff. Upstate's reasonably red, but I have, I just think, look, when God, cancer brain, he used to have a late night show. He was Bill something or other.
So Bill O'Reilly.
Bill O'Reilly. He was our Manhattan GOP chairperson before Adele, before AJ. So AJ Katsimatidis, who's John's daughter,
Yes,
is our current chair, and I love AJ. She does good work. But the big problem is that the machine, the state machine, should be raising money, and that money should be kind of coming into areas where we want to do kind of test candidate runs and that kind of a thing. I think New York can take a lot of lessons from Texas in terms of how the party operates.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that political infighting, and also this, upstate looks at downstate like, and downstate looks at upstate like, until that kind of stuff gets broken, you're not going to have the Republican strength that we had in like the late 90s inside of in New York State.
Yep.
I will tell you, however, in Pennsylvania,
but there's so many questions with New York, right? Because before you get into Pennsylvania, and a lot of people ask this, right? And here's Elise Stefanik saying, while Columbia students try to study for finals, they're being bombarded with chants for a global intifada. President Trump is right. Not a single taxpayer dollar should go to a university that allows chaos, anti-Semitism, and civil rights violations on its campus. Columbia must act. Enough is enough. And I think she just did this today. She was on Fox News just now. Yeah. She might be your next governor, and she would make an excellent governor. By the way,
a wonderful governor.
But people here, I see it in the comments a lot, and they're also on the Finest Unfiltered and 8 in the morning with John and Eric. The GOP in New York City, in New York State, they don't even run candidates. Like, what are they doing with the Manhattan DA's race?
Maude Marone. I like Maude.
Behind Curtis Lewa.
I went and got signatures for Maude. Okay, so we helped Maude get over that line. I think Maude could win, and I think what Maude needs is, listen, if your listeners are out there and there are political donors, reach out to me directly. I'll connect you with their campaign or her campaign. She could win, but she needs to raise another $1.5 million. All right, Sliwa's gotten into, I'll just tell you the inside scoop. Sliwa and some of the Republicans in the state don't like each other, right? So what that does is that hampers his opportunities for local fundraising. He's raised a couple $100,000, but I don't think that there's a match on the mayor's race like there are in other races. Like in other races in the state, you can get almost an 8-to-1 match.
The mayor's race is 8-to-1.
Yeah. But I don't know how much of a match they're getting on this time.
Oz. The problem here is, you just said it, have Republicans, and I've seen the pictures. They go to Mar-a-Lago, but now they're with Cuomo. They're donating to Andrew Cuomo. They don't. There's some places. Carl Hasty, who's the assembly speaker, a corrupt guy who has done everything that could be wrong. If he's on the straw donors thing he was investigated for, he himself hanging out up there in the Bronx at Con Sofrito with everyone else there with Jimmy Rodriguez. This guy being the speaker and being in the assembly, why is there no GOP candidate running against them in the Bronx? That's
Bronx GOP. Look, I'm Harlem GOP. I'm responsible for, at least as the chairman emeritus role, I'm responsible for figuring out how do we get candidates and how do we get them into these roles. But you have to understand that even in PA, okay, anywhere across the U.S., it's 4 steps. You have to find someone and make sure that they're not fucking crazy. Mm-hmm. You then have to groom them as a candidate and explain to them the bumpers. You can do this, you can't do this. You have to get signatures from this, you can't do this. If you do these things, you'll be thrown out, okay? Then there's the personality issue, all right? We've had plenty of great candidates out there, but sometimes you'll put them in front of the camera and they're sitting there talking like this the whole time, and there's no personality, okay? And then the last piece of this goes to GOTV, get out the vote. The biggest problem I think I've had personally over the past 15 years is we had this one guy. I mean, we had two candidates, and I won't say names, but like the one, she ran for Congress, and when she found out that we weren't going to pay for her campaign, because apparently she thinks she had some idea in her head that the GOP would just pay for her, she didn't support our issues. She wasn't on board with the anti-human trafficking, which I'm huge on because it's a big issue in our neck of the woods, and it's also a big issue in any city that has a bunch of black kids. And I was like, well, if you're not going to come to our fundraisers, I mean, like, I know how much support you want. Didn't pay attention to federal election guidelines. Started screaming about me to everyone. Started a whole bunch of anti-Muslim stuff. Started calling me a terrorist because we wouldn't pay for her. We had another guy. He came in. He was patronistic. He's like, I would love to have a black Republican club for himself. And I'm like, we're not pets, So, the biggest problem that you have is for the federal races, the people that you get, or anyone who has money, we get a lot of wackadoodles. For the local races, you get into people where I'm like, well, I could run you, but you're liked from 120th to 130th. The people above 130th can't stand your guts. And your district that you're running in, you need to get those votes, right? And we can cross the line because in a lot of cases, like folks like Sesson was, he was a big leader in the Democratic Party. He got John Liu into office. He got Cy Vance into office with all the votes uptown, right? And then he flipped to become a Republican. We've been attacked by the Democratic Party and everything. It took us 5 times to put his voter registration in because they kept sending it back as a Democrat. Right. These are the local issues that we have to deal with. The nuts and bolts of working with the BOE is difficult. And then what most people aren't aware of in New York, this is so effed up. So they won't give us the opportunities to put our own people in, right? We'll have to argue with it. We'll put names forward. We'll get them, but we won't get the roles. So then the election will come up, and we need to have a whole bunch of poll watchers that are Republican. They'll be like, we put a whole bunch of names forward. We put stuff. The BOE wrote. They stonewalled us, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, we need some Republicans here." So they'll go to the Democrats. They have them sign an affidavit that says, "I'm acting as a Republican today." And then you'll go to the polls, and they'll start saying things like, if you don't vote party line, your vote might not be counted. So we have all this electioneering that we have to deal with on the state level. We've got the challenges inside of party. And then why don't we run candidates? I can tell you story after story of these candidates that we've met with where I'm like, you're crazy. Like you're bona fide crazy,
This is a good question for you. It's funny that they mention this. So Logic's Finest says, Oz, New York City is real estate. Are you saying people like Stark, Tishman, Speyer, Lefrak, and the others are all blue? Why can't the New York City Republicans lobby wealthy real estate magnates for campaign support?
Do you want an honest answer to that?
Yeah.
All right. So this is how they get the votes. They basically will put their money behind because I had a conversation about this, and it's long enough gone. If I was willing to sign up for everything that the magnates wanted, which means you have to sell your soul to whatever their development visions are, even if they don't buy into what you want to do for the community, then you have their support and then you have their money. Okay. Because what they've done is it's influence peddling. I had a couple of conversations. We could have done that. But what they continually do is they'll show up, a couple months before the election. They'll get a couple of roads paved. They'll do backpacks for the kids. They'll do a bunch of barbecues in the hood. They'll bring out steaks. Everyone's happy for 2 months. They've eaten. And that's how they maintain their hold on a lot of these voters. All right. We have tried to do the same things. This is just some of the things that have happened to us. I've announced that I'm doing a big barbecue. I've invited all of Harlem, right? People come. Do you know what they did? They put up a competing barbecue. This is kind of what we're dealing with on a consistent basis. And this is pretty much the experience of, minority Republicans in any major city that's largely blue. But they'll do whatever they can to stop you. and they'll do whatever they can to deny ballot access. They'll do all these things that they sit there and clutch the pearls and like, how dare you, when we do things like that, like when we challenge their votes, when we ask for recounts, but they do it on the normal. And that goes back to what I was saying just originally about the hypocrisy issue and the silent racism, right? We have so many electeds that don't like us as constituents, because we've got Espiat as our congressman now, and it was weird because under Rangel, you had the black machine. When Espiat got into office, do you understand that he doesn't have one black staffer?
No, I know.
Not a single.
That's
okay. So all of a sudden, half of Uptown really became unimportant. What became important was the Hispanic parts of Uptown, and even they aren't getting the kind of subsidies and grants and business opportunities that a congressperson should be providing. It's all the cronyism, and so that's where we've talked to real estate developers, but I'm just telling you that if I were to take that money and go and get elected on that, then I would owe them very big.
Yeah, this is I guess people want to hear some clarity because I have a lot of people here from New York City and New York State, also current cops, and they all ask the same question. These people, I'm saying, because it looks like the Republicans don't get behind the candidate. Like I see Curtis Lewa would make an excellent mayor. Why? Because he's not Eric Adams and he's not corrupt and he won't have be surrounded by, criminals, but he's not getting any backing by the GOP. They're backing Cuomo, who's just, he's another version of an Eric Adams. And we're going.
All right. Let me take this back a bit. Most cities that I would say most Americans live in are about 500,000 to 1.5 million, right?
Yeah.
New York City is 17.4 million people. If you extend it out to the metropolitan service area, which is bigger than the 5 boroughs, it's almost like 25 million people. Mm-hmm. So the challenge that we have when you say, why don't Republicans get behind? The same way that you've got the Italian neighborhood and the Chinese neighborhood and the Black Muslim neighborhood and, now the Syrian Muslim neighborhood and the Jewish neighborhood that's Ashkenazi and the Jewish neighborhood that's Mizrahi and the Jewish neighborhood that's Sephardic that doesn't acknowledge the Mizrahi guys. And then you got the Catholic neighborhood over here, but you got the Italian Catholics over here and the Irish Catholics who still don't want their daughters dating the Italian Catholics. And then you got all these new immigrants are coming in. That's New York. All right. And so when we start talking about the party establishment, I'm just going to go north to south and just tell you what we have. I and Sesson run 96th Street to about 185. Edwin runs 185 to 210. Okay. Because he's got most of the Latino contingent up there. He set up his own club. We work together, but we butt heads on things. Right. Then you have the Manhattan GOP, which I am part of, but again, is slightly separate than us because Manhattan GOP does not come across 96th Street. Then you have the West Side Republican Club. Then you have the West Side Women's Republican Club. Then you have the Young Republicans, who the Manhattan GOP's house, which is not the Manhattan GOP, that's their building, their edifice, and the membership. That leadership doesn't like the Young Republicans. The Young Republicans don't like some of the other ones of us. And the Young Republicans don't like us uptown because they've come and tried to install their own people on our ballots. And I'm like, what are you going to do? And they're like, well, we want the position. I'm like, but what are you going to, I'll allow it, but what are you going to do? And they're like, well, we just want the position. And I'm like, then I'm not going to allow it. I'm not going to allow you on the ballot because I'm the final decision maker for those types of things up there because I'll put my own guy on. Why? Because I know 3 things. My own guy is going to go and talk to either the churches, the synagogue, or the mosques, okay, because we only have one synagogue, and it's up on 113. And my homeboy, God, I hate cancer. brain. Anyways, there was a rabbi I worked with the Lower East Side Shul. He was up there for a bit, but he had another kid. They moved out of state. But I mean, it's like these are our buddies, you know. Like when people talk about all this like bullshit about racism and anti-Semitism, this and that, you got a Muslim guy who's bought the chametz for the entire Lower East Side before Passover. You know, like these are our neighbors. Okay, the stuff that you hear about the big cities isn't there. It's everywhere. We're just, you know, you got a Jewish enclave, and then there's like no Jews for like fucking 50 miles, and no one knows anyone. And they're like, what's this pastrami stuff? It's exciting and new, you know. That's where you get those types of issues. But like in our communities, no one really sees eye to eye on 10 issues. Okay. And when you talk about why is the Republican establishment like this, look, I work with the Morgans, and you know, Rob Morgan does a tremendous amount of work as our first vice president inside of New York State. But getting all this stuff organized, wrangling all of this cattle, because that's what it is. Okay. You know, call us like cattle because one wants to go this way, one wants to go that way. It's really hard. And having, you know, we don't have Bill O'Reilly type leadership anymore. We have good leadership, but we don't have some guy that'll come into the room screaming at people. Right. And if you want to talk about New York, Sal, you're from New York, you know this. Okay. If you don't have like, if you're Jewish, you don't have some old stud bubba. If you're Italian, if you don't have, you know, the guy, you know, if you're Muslim, you don't have like, you know, some older imam. If you're Polish and you don't have, you know, the guy, no one's listening. And the problem is that now we're all these diaspora communities. I'm Gen X, you know, but like you got millennials and Gen Z, and they are pleasers. They weren't raised the way we were. They didn't have, you know, they weren't free range kids and things like this. So they're having their own challenges with leadership, and to coalesce around just getting the candidates on the ticket is a huge issue for us every every single year. And then I have to weed through the wackadoodles that want to run, right? And then I get attacked constantly. They'll be like, you're a terrorist. And I'm like, no, I just think that you're unelectable, you know? And you're unelectable because everything that you're talking about doesn't work in an area where the average income is $38,000 a year. That would work really great if you're in Westchester, where the average income is $90,000 a year, but no one can afford anything you're talking about. So you're going to sound like a complete moron when you go out there. And I don't pull punches on anything, okay? But when you tell them that, they get offended. And so now they're going to go and badmouth you to everyone. So it is this consistent mean girl-ism inside of politics that we have to deal with on Republican state level politics. And then this is every state. So for those of you who are like, this is how the sausage is made, right? And do you understand it's taken us 15 years to get to here, where I have everyone installed. I have all the district leaders. I have good support. We do picnics and we do some barbecues and things like that. And what most people outside of like New York City don't understand, when I say I do a barbecue, you have poor kids coming up and like, they probably haven't fucking eaten in 2 days. You know, like they're like, can I have a hamburger? Do I have to pay for it? And I'm like, no, these are all free because that's what I do, you know? And I always make sure we have some halal and kosher and vegan stuff there because it's fucking New York. Because I don't want to have the vegan guy come and be like, how dare you? And I'm like, I got falafel burgers. Don't worry about it. And it's on a separate grill. You know, it's and thank you, Logic. But I'm just telling you that, like, look, I don't pull punches on this. I want to be the change I want to see. All right. But the only way that we're really going to do this is if you have people like me that you can coalesce around and say, all right, well, we're okay with that guy. And we're still not there yet. We're just still not there yet.
That's what I was going to ask you because, like, in closing, I want to know, so what's next for Oz? What's Oz have in store?
Oz is getting over stage 3 cancer and will be in Pennsylvania for the foreseeable future. So what I will be doing is chairman emeritus. I'll be still guiding things in New York, and I'll still be making sure things happen and the sausage making doesn't get broken. I am well because someone has to be the adult in the room. But this is just in my area. You know, New York's a huge state. And we're slowly handing the reins over. But you know, listen. If you guys are above 96th Street and you are black, brown, and you are interested in getting into politics, even if you're Jewish, please get a hold of me, because we are looking to build the next generation of this, right? We need people to carry this into the mid 2030s, but I need people who live locally and they believe in the area. I am benchmarked right now right outside of Philly. I am going to do a test run this year for a township commissioner in Montgomery County. And I am running, part of my platform is fighting anti-Semitism. And I have had conversations with my business partner's brother who works with the State Department in Israel. And I'm going to start talking to some rabbis locally, because you have to understand, us as Muslims, I'm like, we have the mosque, but we have like 14 friggin' Chabads, and like I got the Orthodox Jews and this and that. Yeah. So I'm like, listen, if I can get people just talking, okay, that's where the anti-Semitism stops, right there. Cool. Because if you can see someone as a person, and I think that's just the big problem here, is that everyone who's into this, like, look at what happened with Barstool Sports and this fucking, Mohan, right? Yeah. This guy struck me as a neat, like one of these 4chan internet kids. And I don't think he's inherently racist. I think he's inherently a dick, and he's inherently an idiot. Okay. But you also look at like what he's doing. He's like doing mean internet shit to everybody. He's irrespective of race or homelessness or whatever else.
In other words, a buffoon.
Yeah. And I think what we need to do as Americans is we need to take a step back from all of our labeling and be like, all right, that guy's just a dick, and maybe you don't mess with him anymore. But, it's getting people to understand each other. And I think Portney had a good idea where he's like, I want to send this kid to Auschwitz. And I'm like, that's a good idea. Maybe he'll see what's up. Right. But, you can't always deal with buffoons. They're always going to be out there. But I think that if we bring people together, and it has to be around the Abrahamic construct first, and then everyone else, and you allow the secular people to have their voice at the table. But, our voices shouldn't be diminished. There shouldn't be anti-Catholic stuff. There shouldn't be anti-Muslim stuff. And there shouldn't be anti-Semitism. And it needs to stop. But changing the conversation is where it begins.
Yeah. And there's one last thing I want to say, but Logic's finest said New York is really a red state. Problem is, half of the population lives in one city. New York City and Buffalo are both blue. That's where the populace and the money is. Money is political power, sadly. Yeah. They make a point, because New York City and Buffalo do have a high population, and kind of like Philadelphia.
Yeah, don't forget Albany. I mean, Albany was red, and Albany has become very, very blue. And it's a weird thing to talk about, but we should talk about this, and we'll save this for later. But it's the trans kids issue. And I think it's a big ideology shift in between secular people who are like, well, this is the new normal, and religious people who are like, why don't we wait a little bit and let's see if you grow out of this, right? And that's where I think America is split, like on just one weird issue, outside of the migrant thing. But that's a big thing upstate. Like upstate, it's a huge issue for them. They have defeated Republican candidates on that one issue.
That's crazy. That's kind of like using abortion as an issue, right? Around the country to try to win
one
election.
One
issue gets you elected. That would be, that's a low information thing. That like I said all the time, there's so many low information voters, and all we're trying to do when you're doing it, you're trying to bridge that gap and get people informed, but somehow you still have low information people voting. Like they'll say, we shop at the same store. Oh, that's great. Oh, we're the same skin color. Yeah, that's it. Check. That's all they care about. You're like, wait a minute. This guy's going to destroy you financially if you put him in office. Yeah, well, we both wear the same suit. So like that's the kind of person that is voting. It's scary. And that's what's infected, I think, New York City, definitely Philadelphia, and some of these other districts you're talking about in Pennsylvania.
From the Brexit perspective, okay, so our chairwoman, Alfie, myself, Jessica, who runs the entire Northeast, we are going in, we're going to start talking to people, but it kind of comes down to sensible voting. But what I will tell all of your listeners out there is that if you are interested in being the change that you want to see, do the hard path. Join your local GOP. Get involved as a poll watcher. become an election inspector. In addition to which, I need you to consider running. Okay. And I mean, one of the things I'm going to talk to Turning Point about probably later this year is, can we figure out some sort of candidate school? You know, because this is a big problem, because people think that they could do anything when you're a candidate. The moment you say you're going into government, you got all these bumpers that, you know, you can't go out of. You know, you can't do certain things. You can't run certain businesses. Like, you're going to have to give up certain things.
Yep.
And, you know, we'll see what happens with like all of the, you know, the Pelosi Act, which I think is freaking hysterical. But there's a crypto version of it on the floor now as well, where you won't be able to invest in that. I think our elected should be thinking the best for us. And I think that the problem is, for over 100 years, it's just been cronyism.
Yep.
And you know, money to name a bridge, a post office, this, that. We need to be thinking better for the public good. But you need people like myself who are worried about, how do we solve the food deserts? How do we deal with this AI job transition problem? Okay. And how do we get our own folks educated so that they can make the good money, live the good life, which transforms the local community? Because if everyone here is making 60 G's a year, trust me, they're not going to want to deal with what they deal with when they're making 10.
Fair point. And I like what you're saying. I know we've been on for a while now, so but you make a lot of good points. I think you gave an insight on what it's like in this GOP party, because many people have this question of why they don't even run candidates. I think you hit, not only give an honest, you gave an honest answer where some would probably wiggle out of it and say, oh, well, but you actually made a fair assessment, and you spoke truthfully. So I you know, thank you for doing that. And these people in the chat, thank you also, and the listeners, because they want answers to why they don't run certain candidates. And you're giving all this, especially you mentioned housing. You know, New York also, they have buildings that they're not even condemned. They're not allowed to turn into housing because it's commercial.
Do you understand that the city is they're sitting in a portfolio right now of 250 brownstones that they would not talk to us about? I wanted to bring a developer in. I was going to bring a guy from the Emirates, right? And what I wanted to do is turn it all into subsidized housing. And I wanted to put a collective around it, which basically said, you donate 8 hours a month to elder care or helping out with computer education, and another 8 hours a month to, you know, helping out with local community gardens, that kind of stuff. Because you force people to be a community again, get off their goddamn phones, you get rebates on your rent, right? And put rent in place where it's a decent sized unit. You know, you don't have to have mixed gender kids living in the same bedroom because New York's super expensive.
Yep.
A little bit of space, that kind of a thing. You get people back to having some dignity, you know, but there seems to be this supposition that you can treat people like cattle and they don't have to have dignity. And, you know, it's okay under Democrat establishments, and that they can be selectively racist as they want. But then, you know, they're the better people, because those Republicans, they're just racist. Look, one thing I like about being Republican, because I'm a minority, is that I know where my racists are, because they're going to come and tell me. All right. What I don't like about the Democratic establishment is that they will have all this silent racism where they're like, oh, no, we don't want those black people working here, so we just won't offer them those jobs, those opportunities. It is the huger issue of racism by exclusion. And that is really kind of, you know, that was Jim Crow. That was Democrat policy. But we still have it today, because they're so happy to support Black Lives Matter. Cool. 3 black families are going to move into your neighborhood. And we have seen time and time again that they'll chase them out. They don't want them in the school board. They don't want them there. So which one is it? Do Black Lives matter, or do they only matter if they're in black areas where you can feel safe from them and you can drink your $7 latte?
That's right. And New York, Logic's Finest again. Man, got a lot of good comments from Logic's Finest today. New York has the 4th most electoral college votes. Both parties fight to the death to control California, Texas, Florida, and New York. Those 4 states rule the road. Sadly, they have the most electoral votes. I'm going to say this. Florida is actually not, I mean, it's a purple state, not really a red state per se.
No, it's going more red. The reason it's purple is
we'll say the trend is red, but it's not. You can't count on it to always be red. Texas has always been red, but there are issues where you could see that turning at a certain point. And California and New York are just blue enclaves. They've been that since I believe the late 80s, early 90s.
California might flip, and the reason California might flip is because of those people that are trying to still rebuild and this and that. They're not able to, and if that tears into next year, trust me, you're not going to see any more Villa Gairosas and whatever Karen's last name is over there is the mayor now. You're going to see them thrown out, and you're going to see a Republican winning. But then that gets to the second question: did we elect a Republican that's qualified and can do what they say they're going to do?
Yep. That's the thing, because these guys are all in one little, you got the problem is, I believe the power structures are all in bed together where they really don't care who is in. It's as long as one of their people is in, because they can control them, because it's all back to the same thing. You want to stay in control, the handouts, the contracts, all that stuff, kind of what New York City has become. That's what they want. Whatever.
Trump is starting to break that, but you have not broken the state machines yet. And until Albany is held to a reckoning the same way that Doge is holding the federal government to a reckoning, the same way that it should happen in Pennsylvania and several other states, that state level stuff is not going to change. They're still going to keep slush funds. They're still going to keep funding their friends. They are still going to go after their special interests. And the folks that are behind them are going to be the ones really wielding the power. It will be out of citizenry's hands. And that's the way that it's been going on for a long period of time. And I'm just telling you, you want to be that change. If you're interested in doing something in Harlem, reach out to me. If you're interested in helping us out in Pennsylvania, reach out to me. But, and I'm happy to come on. If you want to do a half hour or hour show on me just teaching people what they need to do to get into politics, I'm on know about that. I'll come on, but
I definitely think I know you're going to run for the commissioner's seat. So I'm thinking I'll have you back on for that. Yeah. I want you to, we'll come on another time and you talk about Pennsylvania in particular, what you're doing there. I think this was very informative here, where there's a lot of things you're talking about that people right now watching this or going to be watching this in the future on replay are going to say, I had no idea about this stuff. They have, an inkling, but then they hear it coming from someone who's right there where they're always being lied to. That's what the people don't want. They want transparency. They're always being lied to. And the results show that, because they're being lied to. And you're being honest. And that's a breath of fresh air, because if everyone was honest, we wouldn't have all these problems, Oz.
The big problem I see is that most of your politicians are going to put lipstick on the pig. You got to fix the pig. The pig's broken.
See, hey, again, logic's finest. 2024 election, California counties were 91% red, but LA and Frisco are diehard blue. That's where the lion's share of the population lives, like New York City and Buffalo. It's a point. It's the major cities. You know how they say in a presidential election, California, New York shouldn't be making, if you win that, it's over. That's what the Electoral College was designed to stop that. But the same could be said for two cities and a state that are basically running the state. And that should
listen, the Electoral College is the last line of defense that we have against that kind of stuff. Okay. You are always going to have population demographic shifts like that over the course of time. And then what you have seen over 100-year cycles is ebbs, and we're not all pigs. We just look like pigs. You've seen ebbs and flows in terms of going red, going blue, going more pink, going more blue. I think that you'll never be able to fix 100%. The Electoral College is the last line of defense. But what you can do is you can get involved on your local level, and you can stop yelling Republican talking points from the 1980s, because this is all you're doing. Okay. What you can do is you can work with people like me and put together micro platforms inside of the GOP and say, listen, that's GOP platform. This is what we stand for here. Because we're about fixing here, because we can't touch any of that. I mean, what am I as an elected in Harlem going to do about abortion legislation? I'm not doing anything about that. The state has decided that. That's already been decided. However, what I can do is I can work on fixing subsidies and grants to churches, synagogues, and mosques. I can work on fixing our roads. I can work on fixing our education system. I can work on the local issues, right? And that's where I think people need to start understanding this, is that there's a big, if you were to think about it, it's like a beverage with 3 layers, right? The top layer is the federal, then there's the state, and there's the local. You got to focus on the local, and that's where you make all the change. So happy to talk to folks. I'm easy to reach on Twitter. I may be changing the handle just because I'm doing the PA stuff, but it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, so that was what I want to ask you on your way out. Where could people reach out to you, or your websites, anything like that, so people can get?
Well, I have a website going back up. I am Oz4NY, OZFORNY on Twitter. I am Oz Sultan X, OZSULTAN X on Instagram, and those are the two places it's easiest to find me.
All right, so people could go there to reach out to you. So maybe they could get involved, and hopefully we could start getting to the bottom of this and seeing some transparency. The last thing I'm going to ask you, though, before I let you go, what is your favorite pizza? What's your favorite pizzeria?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I got 3.
Let's hear it.
So Joe's Times Square, because it's consistent, okay,
Good
and
one.
it is a good solid pie. I don't really get into the pizza wars in between the 2 Italian families in Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Gianni's in Little Silver, and it's the Gianni's in Little Silver, New Jersey.
Okay.
And in Pat's in Philly isn't too bad, but I'm still doing the Philly tour, so I can't quite tell you like what the best pizza in Philly is yet. But Pat's is pretty up there.
I know the place very well. I know the place you're talking about. Excellent choices. Joe's of Times Square. When I remember when they first opened, by the way, they opened, believe in the mid 2000s or early 2010s. But I remember when they first opened that store, and they were a hit there in Times Square. And yeah, you're right. There is some kind of family strife, or they're arguing over the name or whatnot.
No, because there's a Grimaldi split in between the 2 restaurants. There's the Lombardi, it's Lombardi's versus Grimaldi's, and then the coal-fired issue. I don't even want to get in with John's, pizza.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And our friggin' mayor saying, "I'm sorry, you can't use coal fire for your pizza." So you have to understand this is like an hour discussion in of itself. But I have to say that those are my 3, and then there's one more I'm going to add to the list, and that's Minio's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh as well. See,
because Pittsburgh has its own style of pizza. People
don't realize that some of these towns, kind of like New Haven, kind of like also, where's that town? It's right near Philly. That is, they have their own pizza. They call themselves the pizza capital of the world. It reaches, it's at King of Prussia or something in that area.
No, I know. I just ate there the other day, and they're closing. They do sauce on top of cheese. This is a Philly thing.
Yeah.
Sauce on top of cheese, or just a red pie. Because I was like, who ordered bruschetta? And they're like, no, it's a red pie.
There you go. See, yeah, Nighthawk says Patricia's in the Boogie Down Bronx, Pelham Bay. I know that very well. There's one out here in Fort Lauderdale, by the way. The owners, I know him. Very good people. They've been around a long time. They're Cherry Hill. That's it. Cherry Hill. Yeah. Then there's a tomato pie in New Jersey, and that tomato pie is made famous in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is it's got its own style yet again. And I think it's
a Philly and Southern Jersey staple. I'm telling you, that tomato pie.
I know, and I remember all of this. This is good stuff. See, this is where we could all agree to something, and maybe we could have. Oh yeah, by the way, maybe we could like come together with pizza. Pizza's a great thing that this. Everybody sit around.
Last thing I want to say, congratulations to Pope Leo XIV. The first American pope.
There you go. There you have it here first. I did not know that he was elected yet, but that
happened while the show was going on.
And there's Jalen Brunson, class of 20.
And he's from right where we are in Philly. I mean, he's from friggin' Villanova.
Isn't that great? Look at that. And that was in fact, I was going to get to that with the Knicks winning last night, which was big. But Oz, I'll let you run. Thanks. Thanks for coming on. I'm going to have you on in the future. Again, when you do run for that seat, the commissioner seat.
We're making the announcement after the primary. It's just I'm the Republican candidate, so it's like I get one vote. I'm fine. Again, problems with politics, you know.
Make sure you bring a slice of pizza there. Say, hey, I got or whatever. Bring some pizza with you so you can make everybody happy.
No, I'm gonna shut down for inducements, like handing out water bottles.
Yeah, but that for sure, I'll definitely have you on in the future with that. But thanks for coming on. Thanks for all the info and the insight. Again, I think this was an eye opener, and I think on replay there'll be more eyes open. So, and again, I hope people do reach out to you and try to, if they want to get involved, as I hear a lot about it. I think you're the guy to help them get involved.
I appreciate you, brother. Hey, be well. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Oz. Thank you very much. God bless. There you have it. Oz Sultan just gave you, and I wanted this to go on for a while. So I wanted you all to hear his information and his truths about what it's like to try to run campaigns in a community, what you need to run in these small communities, because this is where it's at. President is great. It's a big shiny object. It's all the small communities and city and state elections that affect you. The president does have an effect on you, but not as much as your local leaders. So kudos to Oz. Great guy. Very intellectual. Has a lot of things to say, and he's very astute in the way he speaks. So I wanted you to hear this so that maybe if you do want to make an impact or a change, you can sign up with him and he'll help you through, especially in New York where it's a mess. You heard the GOP party, the way they do things. Logic's Finest, New York Pizza, Cross Bay Boulevard, Howard Beach. Yeah, Howard Beach does have a few good gems there. Of course, Gino's being the number one. And, of course, I think it's what's that, New Pizza Park or New Pizza there? Forgot the name of it, but that was another one. It's so old school. You just stop and your car in the parking lot and go in there. That was another great place that I'd love to go. Yes, Spumoni Gardens in Brooklyn. See, this is a good discussion. You're right. You could go for over an hour, but this is where people should be. Common ground. Pizza. Sal, this is from Franco. Sal, Anthony's in Seldom is good. You're right. I've heard it. I've heard of this store myself. But I wanted to now get into the final part, of course, the sports, the Joe Beningo part of the Sal Greco Show. Before we get out of here, I saw we mentioned it, right? Who won last night? Unbelievably, the New York Knicks won again, 91-90. They were down 20 points again and came back and shocked the Celtics. They won the first two games in Boston. Now people are saying, and then we mentioned Dave Portnoy, the Dave Portnoys of the world saying, oh, well, the Boston Celtics are going to win the next 4 games. There's no guarantee about any of that. And right there was the final shot that was blocked, okay? It was unbelievable because, I'm no Nick cheerleader by any stretch of imagination, but watching this is just unbelievable the way the game ends, and it's all, dramatic endings. And I think that's what basketball should be all about. The playoffs, basketball was always, even in the 90s, as a teenager growing up, we all stopped everything to watch NBA basketball, whether it was semifinals, the finals. It was the biggest thing. Every night we would watch whatever game was on, or in the daytime when they had some kind of 6 o'clock games and stuff like that. It was awesome. Of course, Michael Jordan was around back then, and it was the time. That was the time the NBA was, we'll say, enigmatic, and it was just the thing to do was be, hey, we got the game tonight. And now watching the Knicks play like that kind of reminds me of that era. Patrick Ewing and Charles Oakley. I mean, I grew up in New York. I'm not too fond of the Knicks, but I do remember the names and who was at the game. But that was unbelievable. And there, look at that. First place Mets. We won again, right? We won last night as well. And then, look, the Islanders had the first overall pick in the NHL. Even though I'm a Ranger fan, but the Islanders do have the number 1 pick in the draft. They got that yesterday. Yeah, look, lowest team ERA, the Mets at 2.89. They're the #1 pitching staff in the major leagues. And they not only won yesterday, Juan Soto hit 2 bombs. You know, he's only the most expensive player in the history of baseball. But I told you he's worth all that money because he brings the winning formula to the Mets. So we remain in first place. Believe we still have the first or second best record in the majors right now, either right behind the Dodgers or right there. But, you know, there he is. Juan Soto hit I think it was a 427-foot blast to dead center field. Then he hit a second home run later on in the game. And I think, you know, like Nighthawk is saying, too, we might get the shake this year. Let's go Mets. And he also said those Boston fans are rowdy. A big riot outside the arena. That was another thing, too. Folks, don't ever resort to violence on a game. It's just a game. It's there for entertainment purposes, you know. Let's not act like a bunch of buffoons in the street. Here was the Knicks, though, back, believe in New York City there. Look at all that. They were so happy, and they were not burning anything. They were too busy. I thought these people last night should be celebrating this and not going to Columbia University. But what do I know? You know, when you're a paid agitator, you'll do anything for $1, I guess. But that's where they should have been. They should have been at that Knicks party because that was something else. Last but not least, of course, well, there's 2 things, of course. Don't forget that highlight Friday night, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., Magic City Fronton. The Renegades and the Fireballs are in the final. ESPN3, Highlight Network on YouTube. You can watch it live, or you can go to highlightworld.com/battlecourt. That is the final of this year. Either the Renegades will be a 3-time Battle Court champion, or the Fireballs will win their first. Of course, you know, we could say a lot about the season. My team won last year, so good luck to both teams, and we'll see if that plays up to last year's final, which, in my opinion, was the greatest final in the history of the Highlight League in general. And then, of course, last time I was on the show, I mentioned Inter Milan, my favorite soccer team. They played Barcelona in one of the most epic semifinals ever. In 120 minutes, Inter Milan won that game 4-3 and advanced on the aggregate of 7-6. They were ahead 2-0. Barcelona came back, scored 3 goals. And in the final, in the dying minutes, there was a minute or 2 left. A defender named Francesco Acerbi scored a goal that looked like, and the guy's a defenseman. He's 37 years old. He looked like a forward and how he did it. It was amazing. The stadium, San Siro in Milan, erupted. They went on to go into extra time where Daniele Fratesi scored. That held up 4-3. Inter Milan is now in their 7th Champions League final. They're looking for their 4th overall. That'll be at the end of the month. Yesterday, PSG, who was in the other semifinal, somehow beat Arsenal 2-1. Advance on a 3-1 aggregate. So PSG's from Paris, from the French league. They are going to their 2nd final. They're playing Inter Milan in their 7th. This is the first time these 2 teams have ever met in a final as well. So that will be very interesting. And again, Inter Milan, my favorite team in all of sports, they really need to win this because it's been a year where they may not get anything domestically, even though they were in first place for, 90% of the year. So lots going on there. But tomorrow, 8:05 live, Finest Unfiltered. There's going to be, I don't know exactly, I think John's going to be on. I'm not sure who else is going to be at the round table because, again, there's a lot going on. So check that out, 8:05 live tomorrow on YouTube, on X, streaming everywhere, the Finest Unfiltered. Check out Executive Perspective. There's the Farah Pizza. Do not forget that. There's the old man. This man is a legend. Fortunately, passed away recently. But that pizzeria, De Farah, there's also one in Las Vegas. I don't know if you know it. It's in Caesar's Palace. Dom DeMarco. Yes, that was him. Dom DeMarco. God rest your soul, Dom. You were an amazing man. I was there. I ate the pizza there. It's, it is what it's as good as it's sized up to be. You'll put it like that. Check out also, so Executive Perspective was on yesterday. There was an episode about mental awareness and the crisis with that and NYPD and other civil service agencies in New York City. So check that out again. Remember, they're on 5:05 Eastern every Wednesday, 17:05 Eastern. Go back and check that out on Wednesday, but you can watch it on replay. Find Some Filter will be on tomorrow. And, of course, I'll be back on Tuesday at 1:05 Eastern, and we'll see what I'll be talking about. But one final note is later today, will be the service for Derek, which was Eric Dim's son. So if anybody wants, you could go to that. I believe it's in Newark. It's open to everyone. Again, my heart goes out to Eric and his family. He's incredibly resilient despite everything that's going on. I don't know another man that could, not be broken from this, but Eric is, he's a fighter, and Eric doesn't let things detract from what he's doing and what his purpose is in life. And even though it's a trying time, I am sure that Eric, this will make him even better as a person, if there even could be, because there needs to be awareness. Again, I mean, we just had Oz Sultan on. I mean, he's in remission. He had cancer. So this is something. Brain cancer, again, took my father's life. And I think that there needs to be more effort put into research and finding a cure for this. Trying to turn such a negative into something, I'm not even say positive, but something that could, we need to find an answer to why this occurs and how to solve this. And Derek will always be our champion, fighting this for a really long time, because trust me, my father was diagnosed with this, and in 1 month he was gone. Derek was fighting this for a very long time. So I believe there should be something new on the horizon that could come of this, where there's a cure. And that would be something that would be a solution for the entire world, not just, New York City or anywhere. So again, my heart goes out to Eric. I believe you could go to that. It's a public service he's having for Derek. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people there. John's going to be there. I know John was going, and he drove all the way up to New York for this. So my heart goes out to Eric, and hopefully when the time comes, Eric will be back, and he'll shed some light onto what the last almost 2 years have been, dealing with this, and to have that kind of resilience. What can I say? Eric is a great man, and I am honored to call him my friend, and I'm always there for him and his family. So again, I send out condolences, and I hope everyone supports Eric and his family and his trying time. So with that being said, I will see you on Tuesday. Thank you all for tuning in. If you can, like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. Share this out on X. Hit the like button as well. And let's keep this going. This is a way to find out how fact-based analysis, take that into your life, and instead of being low information, get informative. So thank you all for tuning in. I will see you on Tuesday. And, of course, signing off from sunny South Florida, which is a sunny place for shady people.
So this is a biblical moment. When Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them. Are you stupid?